Thanks, guys. Senators Manchin and Murkowski sent, I think, a number of you guys a letter today expressing concerns about the delayed implementation of critical mineral provisions of the infrastructure law. It kind of went department by department, but said that there were a number of deadlines that have been missed, and that despite the executive actions that the president has taken on critical minerals, including using the DPA, that there's still a risk that these critical minerals won't be available as we try to do exactly what Brian was just talking about. So I'm wondering why we missed those deadlines and what you would say to the senators about those concerns.
Well, look, I would just say top line, and then maybe Secretary Granholm could talk about the DOA battery provisions. It's a core national security and economic security priority that we build more resilience in key supply chains, and top among those is the critical minerals and materials that go into producing and manufacturing large capacity batteries. We are focused across government in moving and accelerating those efforts, and as you say, the infrastructure law gives us a lot of those tools. We'll be happy to follow up on any of the specific elements, but I think what you've seen over the course of implementation is with the resources at the Department of Energy as well as elsewhere, we are moving out in a way that is historic for the country, and will continue to do so.
Deb's going to follow.
What I'll just say is that the Interagency Work Group for Mining Reform has met, and they're working very expeditiously on ensuring that we can move this issue forward. The mining law hasn't been, it was 150 years old last week, so and it has not had any changes to it since then. So I think working to make sure we're modernizing that piece will certainly help us to move forward with it.
To what degree are you seeing challenges with increased costs in the months since this law was enacted, and any worker either shortages or kind of slow return to work in some of the processing where you have distributed money? How are you seeing those real world hurdles having an impact on how you're implementing?
Yeah, both of these are very real challenges. I was just speaking with a governor today about this, trying to get a sense of what they're seeing on the ground, especially as they're starting to look for the bids that come in and how much they reflect increases in costs. There's a lot of work that's going on to try to forecast and smooth that, and it's something we're going to work closely with project sponsors in, especially if we find that maybe one area in one region of the country, in terms of access to a certain flow of raw materials or something like that, is going in a direction that has more pressure than another. What can we do to help coordinate or rebalance? On the workforce piece, this is one of the reasons why workforce is specifically contemplated in a lot of our programs. So, for example, in our bus programming, there's actually a requirement that a certain amount of funding that goes to a transit agency goes specifically to workforce development. And we were just with the community college in Cuyahoga County that has a relationship between the transit authority and the community college in order to create that pipeline. That's going to happen across the transportation space, and I think construction more broadly. It's one of many, many reasons we're looking at things like local hire, broadening the participation of workers, including working parents, women, workers of color who haven't always been included. We're doing that not just because it's the right thing to do in terms of equitable wealth creation. We're also doing it because we won't succeed in delivering if we leave any talent on the table.
Do you think any of the cost issues are threatening any of the projects?
Well, certainly that creates an additional pressure, and it's something that we're going to need to monitor closely and manage. But I'm sure Secretary Walsh has more on that.
Just real quick, just add a little bit to what Secretary Buttigieg just said. The people are there. We just need to make sure, as we make investments in job training and workforce development money, that we go out and make sure we train the people for the jobs. And certainly, we've been doing this for a long time, looking at the projects, where they're going to be growing, not just in this infrastructure law, but across construction in different areas. So we've certainly been working hard at the Department of Labor, making sure these investments go to the right communities so we can get people into work.
And just to add to that, there's going to be a lot of pressure and natural tensions that come with actually implementing this once-in-a-generation opportunity. You haven't seen this kind of money in a long time. I don't see anybody in here as old as Eisenhower. But that's the last time you saw something like this. And wherever there are challenges, there are incredible opportunities. One of the challenges is going to be on workforce development. All of you know already, because we've said this many times, that governors and mayors are going to build 90% of these projects, which is one of the reasons why, on behalf of the President, we've asked each state to appoint an infrastructure coordinator, which 53 of the states and the territories have done, and we're in touch with all of the governors now to make sure that as these opportunities come, we see the challenges, and then we be able to push down to the ground how actually to alleviate those challenges, because you're building a team. And the team is not just across all these incredible agencies. We just had our 12th meeting to talk about how each one of these agencies are coordinating, and you saw an example just today with Senator Granholm and Secretary Granholm and Secretary Buttigieg talk about the coordination they have between their agencies on just the EV charging stations. We also have to coordinate with all 50 states, and all of the 50 states also have to coordinate with the governors, and we're pushing that team together so there can be one table. One of the issues that we're going to face, which is an incredible challenge because, as the Secretary of Labor said, there are lots of people that are available that need high-paying jobs, is to link them up, get the workforce process in place, and make sure that everybody's benefiting from this infrastructure investment.
Can you speak?
Brian, while you're here, can we get you, can you please address the infant formula supply chain issues there? Are you expecting a consent decree coming out of the FDA today, and how quickly do you expect the Abbott plant to be able to get its production back online?
Yeah, I would just say we anticipate news on that forthcoming, but I'll let the FDA speak specifically to the consent decree when they're prepared. But we anticipate that. I think you heard that from Director Califf this morning. The other piece that is in process today is the guidance around the FDA guidance around importation from outside the United States. I would expect additional information on that as well, and we're over the course of the weekend and continuing through to this morning in direct contact out of the White House with every major manufacturer, existing manufacturer, the three big manufacturers of infant formula, every major retailer of infant formula, as well as the manufacturers of the input components that are necessary to produce formula, and have made clear to all of them that federal resources, including transportation and logistics resources, are available and on call, and we are prepared to move assets in coordination with them as and when we identify any need to do so.
I'm wondering if you guys have an estimate of how many jobs have been created in the first 6 months of this law, and if you have a forward estimate for the next 6 months. And then Secretary Mayorkas, since you're here, I'm wondering if you could comment on whether you believe yesterday's attack in Boston qualifies as an act of domestic terrorism, and whether you think that more steps need to be taken either by the administration or by Congress to combat domestic violent extremism.
On the job front, a lot of these programs, this money has just gone out. So I mean, I think it's still a little too early. And over the last month or so, a lot of these jobs gone out. We're not going to see that data there'll be a couple-month lag there. But I can tell you this: there's been an awful lot of job training going on in workforce development through the agencies Mitch talked about, state boards all across the country. We're in constant contact with them on a weekly basis from the Department of Labor.
4,300 grants have gone out to 3,200 counties in all 50 states.
And let me just underscore that, and also to Kelly's point, that while there are real challenges, to the point that the Secretary made, that the people are there, the opportunities are there, and in the last 3 or 4 months, we've seen a historic pace of job creation for this point in the recovery, and a lot of that has been in construction and manufacturing and other sectors where you can draw a direct line to people getting prepared for what is to come. So we're seeing the impact already in the economy.
But real quick,
Thank you. So if I may, with respect to the tragic events of this past Saturday, it is being investigated, as the FBI articulated, as a hate crime. The term domestic terrorism is a legal term, and because the investigation is ongoing, I won't employ that term. But let me share with you some of the things that we are doing to battle domestic violent extremism, which we have identified since last year as one of the most significant terrorism-related threats to the security of the homeland. We in the Department of Homeland Security, in partnership with the FBI, have issued an unprecedented number of information bulletins and alerts to state, local, tribal, territorial officials who are on the front lines to equip them to identify when an individual is descending into violence by reason of an ideology of hate or false narrative. We have dedicated grant funds, additional grant funds for the first time in our grant programs, identifying domestic violent extremism as a national priority area. We have distributed those funds at an increased level in an unprecedented way. We created the Center for Prevention Programs in partnership to equip and empower local communities to address the threat within their respective jurisdictions. This is a high priority area, and we're executing on the President's national strategy to battle domestic violent extremism.
Thanks very much. First, for Mitch, for a law that has this much money, there's always the potential of fraud. And given what may be the outcome of the November elections, you may have a Congress next year that is looking at doing more investigations into that. Can you just give us a sense of what you're doing to prevent that and prepare for that? And then a follow-up question for Secretary Buttigieg on baby formula.
First of all, it's a great question. One of the first things the President told me is that he wanted to make sure there was no waste, fraud, and abuse, and reminded me of the work that he had done with all of the inspectors general when he was the Vice President overseeing a program. One of the first things that we did was begin to engage with them, with the director of OMB, Shalonda, and her team, with Jason Miller, organize them with Gene Sperling, who had done some extensive work with them. So our team from day one had been in touch with the inspectors general. As you may recall, just a couple of weeks ago, I think it was 2 Fridays ago, we actually brought all of the inspectors generals together, and the President was at that meeting to make sure that they, without getting in the way of their independence, have been able to talk to each one of the secretaries about what the design of their programs can look like and should look like, so that we've learned from past mistakes. And each one of these secretaries has been directed by the President, and all of them obviously have said yes to work very closely with the inspectors general on the design of the program and the implementation thereof. It was the President's first priority that he mentioned to me when we got here, and we feel very good about where we are. We know that there are going to be some contentions from time to time between inspectors generals and secretaries. That's what it's supposed to be for. But early intervention, early design helps make sure that the American taxpayers have open books and transparency, and that we deliver the results where we're supposed to.
All right, thank you all. Have you seen the permit process? I had one follow-up for Secretary. Have you seen any politicization of the permit process? It's real quick. Will the Department of Transportation waive the hours of service rules for truck drivers to deliver formula?
So we looked at that, and we do believe that would be covered. We can reiterate that determination as needed. Look, the more we see, this is principally an issue of production more than goods movement, but anytime we see an indication that goods movement is becoming a limiting factor, we'll do anything we can to tear down obstacles.
About the pilot shortage?